Welcome to the Dental and Mental Podcast. I'm Dr. Galen Detrik.
I'm Dr. Davina Detrik. And we are going to be talking to you about the business and the mindset of dentistry.
Welcome to the Dental
and Mental
Podcast.
Let's go. Part 2, guys. Well, I think this episode is going to be like, we're going to like tell the real. I don't like getting on social media and everything is different than what reality is. So I really want this to be something that people can say, yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Truth be told, I think when people meet us in person, they're always like, you're the exact same as I see you on podcasts and I hear you guys, because we don't really sugarcoat a lot of the stuff that we say. We are who we are.
That's
and
true.
Our opinions are our opinions.
That's true. But you know what I have been told when I meet people in real life?
That we're shorter than they think.
No.
Someone told me that. I was like, take it back.
Okay, well, that's not my experience. No, I know this is like a weird flex, but people, especially clients, because I do Zoom calls.
Yeah.
Maybe I show up looking like a troll, but they're always like, you look better in real life than you do on Zoom.
Nice. Just saying.
I'll take it. I'm the reverse catfish.
I like that. What's the best thing to be? A catfish or a fish or a cat?
No.
What are we talking?
Okay, so here's my theory. You've got a catfish who is good looking on camera and ugly in real life. Right,
Okay.
Dylan? That's a catfish. Okay. Then you've got a reverse catfish, or as you like to call, a fish cat.
Makes more sense.
Which is me. Which is, you kind of look weird on Zoom and your eyes are actually even in real life. Okay, that's a reverse catfish or a fish cat. Okay. Then you've got a cat. Hot on camera, hot in real life. That's you.
Thanks.
Just saying, are you if you want, but I see you. Okay, and then you've got a fish. Not great looking on camera, not great looking in real life.
We don't know him that way.
I do.
All right. Last episode, we talked about your story.
Yeah.
And your story is one that a lot of people haven't heard. You don't share it a whole lot. Why is that?
Well, I think a lot of my transparency comes through with my clients because part of the coaching process is leading myself through something.
Yeah.
And then compounding those lessons that I've learned and being able to take them back to people. So I think that the transparency really comes, like I think my clients all understand or know pieces of my story if it's relevant to the context that they're in their life.
Well, I also think you're, and this kind of gets into what we're going to talk about in this episode. I left you a voice memo yesterday, I think it was. You and I, as a PS, love voice memos. Known for them, actually.
Yeah. Detrik form of communication.
That's right. You can just say so much. Drives, you know when I'm driving because I will leave a lot of messages.
Yeah.
I left you a message and I told you that I think it's pretty fascinating that you are more secretive with a lot of the successes that you've had, but a lot of the battles that you fought as well, because you're very right. I think you share that with our kids. You share it with me. You share it with your clients. And you're very intentional about pouring into that group of people, but you're not like let me go expose my feelings and my emotions and my drama all over social media like so many people do. A lot of people use that as their form of therapy, and you're very much like, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to work on it. I'm going to do what I have to do to get on the other side, and I'm going to use it as a lesson for my clients. I'm use it as a lesson for my children. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that that's really true. And not to say—
I respect that.
Yeah, and not to say that the way anybody else chooses to do it is right or wrong, but for me, my audience is not a place for therapy. I hire coaches, I hire professionals for that. There are things that I work through in the dark so that I can compound lessons and make them relevant to people.
It doesn't have to be right or wrong, but I would push back and say that there's smarter ways of doing it.
I mean, yeah, I agree. There are certain types of vulnerability online that to me are more vulgar than showing your TNA. That's just the truth, right? Like,
Well, not only is that the truth, it's you're opening up to yourself to so many opinions that it'll be very hard for you to sort out what's actually true.
I've just never taken a lot of stock in other people's opinions unless I'm paying for them.
Right. But I'm saying I think that's a problem that people have, is that they feel the need, you're supposed to be relatable. And so social media, it's all about being relatable. It's not really. That's actually not what it's about at all. It's about community. That's what it's built on. It's built on, are people engaging with you? Are they commenting? Are you sharing things together? It's a community aspect. But people have now started to kind of almost denigrate themselves. And to your point, it's been more vulgar almost, because they think that that's the way of connecting with others. And unfortunately, that's not what's happening at all. So to the point of what I'm getting at, I think that you're very good at kind of categorizing things. Right? Getting through what you need to get through and then giving that value to the people that you value.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is huge. We're going to talk about roles a little bit. So the first conversation was a lot about your story. It was also about how women in general as dentists bear a very different burden than men do. And this kind of comes from Dr. Kyle Stanley's post that he put up, I believe today.
Right.
Okay. The roles. You and I take what would probably be considered more of a traditional approach to roles. It's not fully, but it has more of those pieces. And a lot of people wouldn't necessarily agree, or they were going to feel their feathers ruffled by our take. What is our take on roles? How do you see it?
I do think that our roles are very traditional, and I don't think that we started off that way. And I think that when we were not operating in defined roles as we would consider being traditional, we had a lot of friction in our marriage.
Yeah.
And I think early on, you and I in our marriage, it was, I really thought I could lead better than you. Mm-hmm. And so I would, you and I would go to battle about that.
Quite a bit.
Where I'd say, no, I actually think I'm the person to be making decisions for our family because I'm kind of a better leader than you are. And so I think that I'll take that. And so we were always butting heads against who was the leader of this family.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think by nature, you can be very opinionated, very strong in your opinions. And
me?
Right?
Just a wallflower.
Surprise right there.
Just a wallflower.
You also have an energy that can be more masculine if you just let it go, right?
Yeah.
An unbridled, because it is very domineering, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's one of the interesting things is that, so I remember a very pivotal conversation actually for me. Early on, I got a very good friend who was in med school. I'm in dental school. And we were going through this battle together where our wives were now kind of, having the first kid and entertaining how do I still practice? His wife as a physician, my wife as a dentist. How do you do that but also take care of the kids? And there was this inclination for both of you to just take care of the kids more. And he and I were like, well, but now we have twice the debt. And both being very practical people who came from not very much.
Right.
We're sitting there with more than $500,000 in debt combined thinking well, we got sold a bill of goods.
Yeah.
And that was a very real feeling. It was a feeling of you hoodwinked me. If you were going to do this, pay for debt. But if you're not going to do that and then you got my kid, now I got to pay this all off. And what it became was this very tit for tat thing. I think that's one of that legalism of checking boxes and saying, did I do this? Did you do that? Don't you think that that's one of the fastest ways to destroy relationships and disintegrate roles?
Yeah, absolutely. Because things are not equal. I think you and I both carry a lot and it's very different.
Yeah.
We both carry a lot and it's different. But I think if you try to equate, well, I'm doing this, why aren't you doing this in this exact same way? That's going to lead to nowhere very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? I think you carry you carry the stress of a business. I am not an owner of Vita. I am half a partner at Thrive, but I am not an owner at Vita. That's a $5 million+ practice that I do not have to worry about the staff, the issues, the patients, I am not a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is a very different stress, where some of the stress that I have is very different when we're talking about the day-to-day parenting of our kids and the managing and the running of our household on top of Thrive, which you also do. They're different. And I don't think that you can start to quantify them as, well, how many diapers did you change? If I come to you with that, it's like, well, how many employees did you manage this week, right? And that's not a conversation that's going to lead to anywhere productive or really foster excitement or growth in your marriage.
Right. Yeah. I mean, but this is like a topic of today, right? And this is something that people really push back against, because I think they've confused having equal parts equity in this relationship with being equal across the board, right? Equal responsibilities, equal number of tasks, equal number of inputs. And that's not true.
Yeah, but I don't think that we can talk about that with really addressing the difference between you and I have consciously made an effort to divide those roles very differently, right?
We'll talk about that. Talk a little bit about how it was screwed up at first, because I think that we have to go back to where you and I were actually very much kind of at each other's throats. I mean, they always talk about like the big D word, but that was like something else kind of passed around a little bit here and there when we were really worked up, because it was like, is this even going to work? And we were so frustrated. And finances had a piece to play in all that, and time and stress and all the rest. So where were we? What was our take on leadership in the relationship, finances, all the rest, the stress of trying to create businesses and make dentistry work?
Well, I think that that's the problem, is that they weren't clearly defined. So once everything's like 50-50, or what you would call 50-50, right? Like we both have equal say over parenting of the kids, and we both have equal say over what happens in the business, there's not a clear leadership position. And if you are in a dental practice, everybody knows that if there's not a hierarchy and there's no ultimate person responsible for the decision making of that entity, things get really cloudy and fall off the rails really quickly.
Yeah.
And so as much as we'd like to say 50-50 partnership, that is just not what worked for us, because somebody has to ultimately be responsible for whatever it is that they're curating. So if I'm responsible for the curation of our children and the education of them and our household, then that is what I have the final say on. And yes, I can ask for your opinion and defer to that ultimately, but I'm the one that's managing that thing day to day. So I have to have autonomy in those areas.
Yeah.
Right. And we made that distinction where it was like, you're going to go full force into clinical dentistry, and I am going to move into the management and support of our children and our household.
Right.
And I don't think, for me, it wasn't a hard thing to give up, because I think that I don't have a huge attachment to being known as a clinical dentist.
It wasn't hard for you from that perspective, but I do think that it was, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was more difficult to let go of certain things in terms of like the decisions overarching for like our finances, direction of our family and vision and all the rest. Because if we're really honest, you might have been a better leader early on.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
And I'm not arguing that.
I mean, come on now.
Well, but some context is important, right? You grew up with 4 sisters, and I was raised by an only child. I was an only child.
Raised by an only child.
No, I was raised by an only child. I raised myself.
I was raised by an only child. Me.
No, but what I was going to say, yeah, I'm an only child that had a very strong father, and so in a lot of ways, I was my dad's favorite son. Right? Yeah. So the way that my dad communicates is how I communicate. Yeah. And I learned a lot of things from my dad. So I learned how to be a very strong man from my father.
But I mean, it's such an interesting conversation. There's so many things to talk about. I hope that we kind of hit on them all, because there's the construct of what it means to be masculine is what you're talking about to some degree, right? Your dad communicates like a man. It's very talks like the bros and all the rest. And he's very masculine guy that way. Can be more explosive, right? More
Yeah.
domineering in his energy.
Oh, yeah.
And that's associated with masculinity, but I would push back against that to some degree because I think one of the strongest masculine traits, that's one of the hardest things to have, is patience.
Yeah, I think that's
Patience
true.
to see something and to see people, to let a person or to let a situation really unfold itself. It's a strategy. And some of the greatest generals, that's what they had. They had the ability to be patient. And I think that gets overlooked, right? So there's different components to what masculinity really looks like, that masculine energy. And what's the interesting piece is that I would tell you the same thing. I think that I was a poor leader early on. That's actually one of the biggest reasons why relationships are hard.
I think so.
Is that men now, speaking to all of you, are weak.
So
And we were raised that way. We were raised that way, and unfortunately, don't really know how to make decisions quickly. We don't know how to make them without taking a poll. We don't know how to be wrong and not have to apologize to every person that we see for this mistake. There's so many things that men don't know how to do anymore.
absolutely. And
That's why you can't trust us.
absolutely. And when we can't, women need to feel safe.
Correct.
So if I can't feel safe with you being able to execute, produce a result, and make a decision, I then have to step into that role, which means I am now
100%.
the husband of our relationship, right?
Yep.
We watched a movie a couple of nights ago.
Oof, so good.
You guys, one of the
Oof.
it was such a good movie. It's a psychological thriller, and from the perspective of breaking down roles and watching how this fails really quickly and also put your family in harm's way. The movie was called Speak No Evil, and it's with who? Who is that guy I like?
James McAvoy.
There you go.
Guy's phenomenal.
What an ace, right?
Yeah.
What an ace.
So good.
His acting's incredible. But throughout that whole movie, I don't want to spoil it because I really want you guys to go and watch it. But
Yeah, don't.
the point of the movie was being able to watch a person, a man, lead his family or lack thereof, and watch his boundaries continue to be eroded until he was in a very terrible situation.
Highly vulnerable spot.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's literally what that looks like.
Yeah. And it was very dramatic, obviously, in the movie, but that's happening all day long, every day, in relationships all over the world. And it's just happening much slower over these chronic periods of time, and boundaries getting eroded and eroded and eroded. And what you find, we work with clients all the time. We work with dentists all the time.
We work largely with couples too.
Largely with couples. So we either work with couples who are both in dentistry, both practicing, or one who's a dentist and one who's running the practice,
Right.
Office
Yep.
managing, right?
Yep.
Or someone who's a dentist, but their spouse is somewhere very closely related to the business in some way, shape, or form.
Right. Yeah. The spouse is not removed from the business.
Correct. Yep. Right. And they have an active role to some degree.
Yes.
And
Even if it's counsel,
Yeah.
right? They understand the workings of the business. They're constantly in an advisor role.
Yeah. The percentage of the men that we work with who I would say have really got it down prior to coaching with us, 5%. It's a small percentage that come who have that unlock, where the problems are case acceptance and that's it. And we
Right.
can just help you with that, right? It typically is this multifactorial problem. And think about this. If you are a man who is feeling emasculated, right? Your role is getting abused at home or whatever, what you think should be your role, all right? Your decisions aren't honored. Guess what? That's going to happen with your staff. Your staff's going to erode those boundaries. And you know who else is going to? Your patients. You're probably not going to be very clear and decisive in your treatment planning, which means your case acceptance is going to go down, which means you're going to start to hurt financially. And guess what? That's going to affect your relationship. And it becomes this massive cycle where it's a doom loop. And this is on both sides of the fence. I think you can speak from the female side. But if you don't have your roles correct and if you're not operating at the highest level on that front, the rest of your business and life is going to start to really implode. Small ways at first, but it will definitely start to – and that's what's happening for us.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's happening for us. And so we had to really make a conscious decision to correct that and to correct it quickly.
Well, I think the other thing too is you can't pay somebody large amounts of money if that person hasn't created safety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? If I can't write you a check for $50,000 if I don't actually know and believe and trust that you've got this handled, right? So when I write you a check, it's like, I know that you're going to be able to lead me throughout this entire process and that anything that happens along the way, you're going to be able to handle and take care of.
Yeah.
And so when we get into this place of, well, maybe it could, or maybe, or what do you think, or whatever it is, whether it's conscious or unconscious, that person receives the message, I'm not actually that safe with you. I don't know if you've got me. Mm-hmm. Therefore, I'm not really ready to write a check to you because I don't know if you can handle this.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Dental and Mental Podcast and this topic resonated with you, we go so much deeper inside the Thrive Lab.
So if you too want to be copied but not replicated, come join us in the lab.
And just for you, because you listen to the podcast, if you want a full $1,200 off of the year-long subscription, just use coupon code podcast. See you then. And you're getting into the age-old chicken and egg, which is that when people are having a hard time building that trust and rapport, it's like, well, if a person would just kind of start to like trust me, then I would get better, right? I could lead if you'd follow. And that person's like, well, I'd follow if you could lead.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And the hardest part is that when you first put down a foot, like when I first began to be like, hey, this is the decision, this is what we're going to do, you were testing it.
Yeah.
And you were testing it because mama's got to know that it's not going to fall apart. And that safety really is like you really could trust that, which meant the best way for you to know, this is just scientific, for you to be able to trust that the decision is good, you test it.
Right.
And if I'm speaking from a man's perspective, if I'm not ready to take some arrows for the time I put my foot down, right? Well, then I'm not really ready to lead.
Yeah, because then I got you. Then I got you. Then I know that I can that I can run over you. Right.
100%.
I've got to test that. And I think that's, early on in our marriage, that's really what it looked like. And we're using our marriage as a smaller context for what happens on a larger scale. But now in our marriage, one of my friends calls me a passenger princess.
What does that mean?
So she's, because I was talking to her about how you and I travel, which is I don't bring anything but myself. I don't carry my bags.
She's a dentist and there ain't no floss in that thing. There ain't no toothbrush.
I don't have
I got doubles.
I have no ticket for my flight. I don't have my passport or my ID. I don't have my luggage. I have me and all of my hopes and dreams for this vacation.
And knickknacks.
That's all I have. Yeah, I have some knickknacks, a lip gloss, and a plastic straw in my pocket. And that's literally all that I have. And you take care of the rest. So I was joking with her. She's like, oh, you're a passenger princess. That's what they call you, because her and I just traveled recently. And I was like, oh my gosh, girl, I'm like so stressed out. Like, do I have my idea? Like, I don't know how to travel now. It's turned me into almost like a 50s version of a wife. Those women who are like, I don't know my bank account number. My husband's not with me or whatever it is. And it's not to that extent. But there's points of that where you take so much off my plate now that I am really transformed as a mother and a wife because I don't have those other worries anymore.
So let me ask you this question, because I think if I put myself in the seat or in the place of our audience, maybe it's a female dentist who's listening to this, and they're thinking like, "Gosh, you like that?" Right? Because they're thinking they're in boss mode still. Like, I got to run this practice. I got to take care of payroll. I got to do all these things, but I also got to do this. And my husband's kind of like out to lunch and like not taking care of these things. And there's that thought process that you had early on too, which is like, you would enjoy that? You would enjoy being in your position right here? Doesn't that feel vulnerable? Doesn't that feel like you're in control of anything? Doesn't it feel like you've divested yourself of so much of your independence that now you're whatever? Okay? How do you feel about that? How would you answer to that?
The household and the business are two different conversations.
Agreed.
So the household, you are the leader of our household. And so I am perfectly happy letting you be the leader of our household. In the business, I am still very much accountable and responsible for producing a result. Mm-hmm. And so I am clear on when I am to switch into a more masculine role, and I'm clear at what my result is that I need to produce. And I also know how to switch that off and when to switch that off. And that's the difference.
Yeah, I think the thought process is that it almost becomes chaotic or unstructured, and that's not the case at all. It's not like you got to know when to show up for your client calls. You run your business.
Right.
You have a business within the business, essentially.
Yes, and I'm still responsible for that, for producing a result, for all of those same things. So my masculine energy gets to come out in certain aspects, but the difference is the delineation of when that switches off and when I'm not responsible for producing a result, which means I can be more laissez-faire, which is part of what you like, right? That is part of it's part of the magic. Women bring so much magic to a situation, right? They bring magic and possibility and dreaming and excitement and what ifs, and that is really fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that a lot of times is the heartbeat of a family. But if you're responsible for producing a result, we can't also produce a result and be in whimsy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's as a business owner, okay, let's say male or female, it doesn't matter. You're a business owner. Why do you like systems? Why are systems so important? Because a system, if it's a true system, lets you take your hands off. It gives you peace of mind. It allows you to trust and to feel safe, and then to focus your energy on something else. That's the point of a system. So that you have to be worried about, like, did that happen? Did that take place? Is this working the right way? Like, systems don't require micromanagement. And I think most dentists, when you really get into like their numbers and the problems that they're having on the rest, they're either micromanaging the hell out of every last bit of their business and life and relationships, where they're a stress ball. And you're like, it's insufferable. It'd be so hard to be around you, right?
Right.
And you see that consistently. Or the person's like, I don't know how to turn the lights on, and they're just like out to lunch on everything.
Right.
And can't make a decision and to save their life. You're like, do you know what your numbers are? Like basic numbers. What did you produce last month? I don't know. I'd have to ask Sally. And you're like, this is why your business is the way it is.
Right.
Right. So you have these two opposite ends of the spectrum. And it's a lot of times like being in an argument with somebody and you're like, if we would just both give at the same time, we could have this great result. But because there's like this pride piece, you're like, you go first. No, you go first. You don't get there. I think you and I both get to experience really joy and peace in our relationship because we've been able to let go of these things that really actually weren't like the hills we wanted to die on.
Yeah.
We held them because we felt like if we didn't hold that and the other person let us down, we'd be giving up something that was somewhat important to us. But the reality is now that you could let go of it and you take care of it so well for me and I take care of things for you so well, it's like, that's fantastic. I don't like doing that. That's amazing that you'll do that.
Yeah.
Right?
And we've also seen this with friends of ours who are also operate at a high level, right? That the husband and wife also have a tremendous amount of responsibility, and both of them are carrying family stuff and they're carrying business stuff, and they understand that they are operating different within their businesses, and then they come together completely different as a couple.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's super true. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right.
This affects intimacy too, and we're not going to get into that heavy, but that is something that a lot of people suffer with, and they're like, that's not there. Our relationship doesn't have that anymore.
Well, yeah, because if I'm bossing you around, you don't want to sleep with your mother, right? I don't want to sleep with somebody that is acting like my son or a child.
Yeah.
What? That's the biggest buzzkill. I'm putting it plainly because that's
plain as it could be.
Because that's the dynamic that starts to happen. It's if I'm mothering you, that's not a person that you want to be intimate with. It's somebody that you have to mother.
Right. Right.
Right. And somebody who is mothering you, also not somebody you want to be intimate with.
Correct. I mean, it's a very simple formula in many ways. It just seems hard to get there. But I think for a lot of people that they look at the symptoms and they're like, we're not intimate. I'm frustrated. And so you take that in your business and you're having all these like bizarre effects that you can't really trace back to what in the world it came from. You know, they're just like haphazard things that are happening. And so then you start to like take random CEs and random things to try to fix this stuff. And it's like, no, you got to get back down to like the most basic thing. It's one of the first things that you and I learned that actually I go back to all the time, which is your most powerful asset. The most powerful thing that you have is your ability to choose. And you can make a choice right then and there to become somebody who leads. You lead too. We both lead, but we're leading ourselves first, and then we're leading in our respective ways. And honestly, leadership is not something that everyone should be like clamoring for. Leadership's fucking hard. It should be like, no, I get to lead. No, I get to lead. It's actually not that fun. When you're really, really taking it seriously and you're growing things, there's aspects of it that are very enjoyable. But for the most part, it's just a lot of responsibility. It's pretty much what it is. You know? The bigger Vita has grown and the more people we've hired, I feel very blessed to have almost, I think, 15 people now working for us. That's amazing. Right? It's amazing to have 15 staff members that we're helping provide for their families. It's amazing to have the patients that we do and to know the numbers that I look at the numbers that we're producing. I'm like, that just means that that's how many people we helped, right? Who are healthier now than they were before. Great. And there's so many choices that Devin and I have to make every single day, and so many things that go wrong. And guess what? We get paid last. That's just the way it goes.
But I think the point that you're that I'm hearing when you're saying that is that you're making those choices.
100%.
If you came home every day and you didn't know anything that was happening at your business,
or complained about it all the time, same thing.
Or either you don't know, or you're complaining about it, or it's like, Ma, how was work? I don't know. Just did some stuff. I don't know. Well, what's going on with this? I don't know. I would start to look at you like a person who doesn't know, which means just from a biologic perspective, my safety alarms are going to start going off, and I'm going to be like, hey, has this guy got us or does he not? And if not, I need to start stepping it up because I need to make sure that I'm okay and that my children are okay. Therefore, maybe I should start driving the ship because I don't think you've got it.
Yeah.
I don't think you've got it.
Yep. 100%. I think instinctually men, and this gets painted in a bad light, but I don't think that it needs to be. I think that it's done incorrectly. I think men instinctually want power because power comes with respect. And you don't get there without making very hard decisions. Usually those decisions begin with you in the form of discipline, in the form of not complaining, in the form of not venting to people that you shouldn't even be venting to, right? Like you find a couple of good mentors and that's it, you know. The rest of it, be silent about. There's a lot to be said for what you want and what I want. And your, I think, keen desire is to be taken care of.
In a lot of ways, what we're saying is that men have turned into women and women have turned into men. That's the take-home message.
That's pretty much it. That's
right?
actually probably the name of this podcast.
That's really, but that's really the take-home message is like, okay, well, if you're going to be, worried and sad and sulky and complaining and, you didn't use this word, but gossiping, right? Telling your problems to people who don't have any impact on your problems, then that means that I've got to step it up in the more masculine way.
Yeah.
Then everything is out of balance because from a biological perspective, I do not have the testosterone that you have. Therefore, I'm going to crash out from an overload of cortisol.
Yeah.
Because I can't function. I don't have the testosterone to do it, but I know that the result needs to happen.
I mean, these are things where even deal with like gaining weight and losing hair and stressing out
Dylan,
and having a hard time. Like these are all connected. Biologically.
So you're not really on social media much, but I'm going to ask Dylan if he's seen this trend. Hey. You guys, if you've seen this trend, it's wild. Have you seen this trend of women who are putting up photos of what I look like now and why they won't get in a relationship? And they have like their 2 pictures. Have you seen this? Wild, right?
Explain it again.
Okay, so there's this trend that women are putting up a photo and it's like of them looking awesome and amazing and hot.
Okay.
And then it's like, this is why I won't get in another toxic relationship. And you swipe over and they are ruined, like 100 pounds heavier. their faces are exploded, their hair is jacked up, their faces are completely broke out, like they are wrecked.
Yeah.
And this is a social media trend. And it's actually really sad because it is really giving the message that if you're in a relationship, look how destroyed your body and life and everything gets. And I just don't think that that's the way that it has to be.
No, it really doesn't have to be that way. I tell a lot of clients, so they'll, it's interesting because you get to really understand the dynamic that they have with their spouse usually, right? Or their partner, and you get to experience what their dynamic is with their kids. And I think what you and I love most about coaching is seeing those relationships improve. And not just improve, but like completely change. That's our version of transformation, like a small transformation, but it's like for your life. And you do. I mean, there's been moments where, Doc will leave me this Vox or this long-winded message about all the things that they think are going on, and they're complaining about this and complaining about that, and she said this, and usually the message back is stop being a bitch. Something to that effect. Just like, stop. You're going the wrong direction. You're painting everything else, and you won't take personal responsibility. What you're getting at is that it can change, but that's because you have to change. You can change. People can. You can make a very different decision.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was the hardest part for you and I. It's not dentistry. It's not even running a business. The hardest part for me was actually becoming a leader, a better leader than you were, because you were better than I was. And if I wanted to save our marriage, and if I wanted to be a role model for our children, and if I wanted to be a successful business owner in multiple fronts, I had to be the kind of man who could have a lot of power and do very well with it. I could give a lot of safety to a lot of people. And there's no greater joy. Understand that joy is not happiness. Joy is I feel very good about what I get to do, not I'm having a great time doing it.
Yes, it's a satisfaction
Two
versus
different things, right? But that I think we're pleasure seekers, which is why, honestly, you know why most men are acting like little boys? Because they're still focused on pleasure. Because you're not a servant.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, I even have that conversation with our kids where it's like, this isn't fun. I don't care.
Who cares?
I'm not happy. And people will say that, right? Like, I just want to be happy. What does that mean? Right? That is a very temporary feeling that you're asking to last forever. And that is crazy talk, nonsensical, actually.
Yeah, it's a Disney approach to life.
Right. Joy is a very different thing than I would love to feel happy all the time. Well, I don't know what to tell you. Don't come asking me for happiness all of the time, right? But I think joy is a very different thing that people get to experience once they start to shift into different roles.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so full circle.
Yeah.
We started with your story and kind of how you got this, and we all actually really started with Kyle's post. What do you say? What is your advice to female dentists who are in that weird place? They're in that weird place of, I want to have a family. Maybe they've had a kid or two, but they also own a business. And it's like, I don't know which hat to wear. And it's almost too many hats. And so probably cortisol's flushing through their system constantly. Like, it's just a hard, guilt trip-ridden, stressful cycle. What do you say to them? What do they need?
Well, I think it's really getting clear on what is it that you want, right? Because now we've got to start talking about something different, which is legacy. And is it legacy in your business? Is it legacy in your family? Do you want to be a business owner? I think there's a lot of attachment and identity that is rolled up into being a dentist. And people can feel a certain way for saying, yeah, maybe I want to cut back days, or maybe I want to work less, or, maybe I am happy being at home, or whatever it is. Or maybe I do need to find somebody to come in as an associate and be a replacement for my practice. There are so many different solutions that we can come up with that works for a variety of different women and what it is that they actually want.
Yeah.
And it's that old adage, you can have whatever you want, but you can't have everything.
I love that. Yeah.
Right? So it's like, yeah, I don't know if I can tell you, yeah, you can have absolutely every single thing that you want, but the most important thing that you want, we can get you there, and we can find different solutions to make that work. And maybe not all women are going to be the same, right? Some people are going to be like, I love my job and I don't want to be at home. with the kids or whatever it is. And it's like, okay, that's okay. But let's find a solution that gets you more time so that you are feeling less guilt around that, or that your time that you do have with your kids is really impactful. Does that mean that we need to look at the business and we need to make sure that we have a revenue to hire a chef, and that we need to have revenue for a nanny, and that we need to have all of these things that are in place? Or that you bring on an associate so that you are downsizing and that you're working less time, and that you don't have the stress that you're currently carrying day to day, so that you can shift from CEO into being a wife and being more whimsical, and allow your husband the chance and the opportunity to rise and level up in his leadership. So these are all conversations that we're having, and there are a variety of different solutions, but it really is dependent on what is it that you really want.
I love that answer, and I'm not going to add a lot to it because I think it's perfect. You are citing something that's super important. Two things, actually. The first is, this is not a recipe that everyone has to adopt or follow a traditional model.
Right. Yeah. I'm not even saying that.
No. Yeah, not at all. I think what you're getting at is really truly like, what do you want? And it happens to be that there are a lot of women out there who have been sold it has to look like this. You have to be a boss, or you have to stay at home. They're being sold this, when it's like, but what do you really want? And I think that's one of the things you're really good at.
Well, you and I help a lot of women build
very
a lot of extraordinary things.
Extraordinary businesses, very profitable businesses.
Fabulous.
Great relationships, phenomenal marriages.
Yes, exactly. Fantastic business owners. And so all of the things can be done, but we've got to look at it from a systematic point of view. And there's also growing pains that have to happen, right? Do you need to increase your leadership, or do you actually need to dial it down when you go home and when you're with your significant other?
And things get to change.
Yeah.
You can get to go through seasons. It might be that, hey, for the next 2 years, I really want to just crush this and I want to build this up. It's actually literally no different than someone saying, I want to have an exit strategy. So I'm going to build my business up for the next 3 to 4 years. And then I want to change gears. It's literally no different. It might be that that's when you're going to focus on really, really your family and taking trips and making memories that way. That's fine. You just got to know what you want. I also would say that the second thing you've really highlighted, which is a great full circle. I remember thinking to myself, putting myself in your shoes and thinking, what must it feel like to have been in dentistry for so long and to essentially, quote unquote, give up your degree, which most people would say. They're like, oh, you're not practicing clinically anymore? You gave up your degree. The psychological side of that, but realizing that the courage it took for you to not be so attached to that expression of your DDS. And now to say, but actually there's another opportunity. And I'm going to take what I know, take what I've experienced, my 20 plus years in dentistry. I'm now going to be able to speak to people in that same field and journey with them. It was, for lack of a better way of putting it, your higher calling. And you're at that place where you're like, fuck it, this sucks. But the truth is you really did. I don't think at that point in time you knew that. But knowing you now, this is where you thrive. This is what you're so, so good at. Better than anyone I've ever seen. Because you know how to get into and tap and mine what's really in a person. And I think what you're getting at is that every person's different. Every person's unique. And they got to be heard. In most of our relationships, like, you just want to be seen.
You know, the easiest way to put this, though, is like when I hear you say that, to me, I'm like, I'm going to be a winner no matter what position you put me in. Right? Yeah, like, that's just how I feel about it.
Bet on you.
Yeah, that's not an arrogant thing. It's like, I'm going to put in the work wherever I'm positioned at. So if I'm mopping floors, we're going to mop the floors. Yeah. Right? If I'm CEO, we're going to CEO things. And so I don't really worry about that because I'm going to do me no matter where I'm at.
Well, the difference between arrogance and conviction is very thin. It's razor thin. You know, I think arrogance has this, it's a self-service. Conviction is just an assurance of that victory. You already know you're going to win. That's all it means.
Well, that's how I feel. It's like, okay, if we're going to make bread, we're going to make bread. If we're going to homeschool, we're going to homeschool. If we're going to CEO, we're going to CEO, right? Like the decision is the decision. And we just had a conversation with our daughter about this. Like, what is your decision? And I think that that's the place where people really have an opportunity to go to work is what is the decision? And when you're indecisive, well, am I this? Am I that? Should I do this or should I do that? And trust me, I'm going to say something that's really unpopular, but I don't care. I was for a minute in a mommy Facebook group or something like that for women dentists, and it was awful. It was so awful to hear the way other women talked about women and the judgment that they had on the decisions that we're making. It was like, if you're in an environment like that, get out of toxic environments. And if you have to sequester to be able to achieve your goal, then that's what you have to do. So all of that to say, I hope that this podcast, I hope that you don't feel judgment. I hope that you feel encouraged. And I hope that you can pick out pieces from our story that apply to your story and realize that to your point, your most important factor that you have is your ability to make a choice.
And I'll say from a man's perspective, in our relationship, it's because you take care of so many things for me, so many things, that I think complaining is one of the things that probably drove you like the most crazy. I would complain a ton early on in our relationship.
I hate that shit.
I hate it. And I would. But it's funny because when you really think about like, why is he complaining? Like, when I had to ask myself, like, why are you doing that? Why are you complaining? There was a deep-seated unhappiness with things. And it's like, this isn't working. And so I have to like vent my stress about the shit that is this relationship right now. Just complain about things to be seen, to be noticed. Give me some attention, right? Well, now you give me attention by taking care of me. And so it's like, I don't even need to do that anymore. That doesn't mean that everything goes smoothly, but I don't get the same value out of that. I don't get the reaction they want. It's like, actually, that I just take care of those things. You don't even need to worry about them. And I feel a lot of peace doing that because you've provided such an environment for me. And I would encourage people who are listening to this, if you don't have that kind of environment, it is very attainable. It is. And the relationship that you might feel is broken or not fixable or you're with the wrong person, whatever else, there's a very good chance that it's something that is repairable and that you can achieve something that's very special.
Yeah, we're champions for marriage. Fix that shit.
Amen. And take a knick-knack.
All right, guys. We will see you on the next podcast.
Peace. Thank you for listening and or watching the Dental and Mental Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode or any others for that matter, feel free to tap that subscribe button on YouTube, Apple, Amazon, as well as Spotify. While you're there, why not leave us a review up to 5 stars? And if you're on YouTube, go ahead and leave us a comment. Let us know what topic you want us to discuss next.
If you like what you heard today and you want to be involved in the Thrive world from coaching to courses or just to connect with us, go to thethrivedentist.com.